Don't kill me, human. I'll warm your bed, the alien warrior pleaded on her knees. The bitter wind of Arcticon howled across the battlefield, carrying with it the metallic scent of blood and the acrid tang of discharged weapons. Commander Ashton Snow stood like a colossus amid the carnage, his massive frame encased in obsidian battle armor accented with gleaming silver inlays. Blue light pulsed along the seams of his suit, casting an eerie glow across the snow-covered ground and the bodies strewn across it. His breath came in steady clouds of vapor through his partially raised visor as he surveyed the aftermath of the skirmish. The Terran Special Forces had made short work of the Arcticonian ambush party, another desperate attempt by the locals to push back against humanity's expanding presence on their frozen world. "Perimeter secure, Commander," Lieutenant Parker's voice crackled through his comm. "All hostiles neutralized except for one. Awaiting your orders." Ashton acknowledged with a grunt and turned toward the lone survivor, a female warrior kneeling in the crimson-stained snow 20 paces away. Her sword, slick with both human and alien blood, was planted in the frozen ground, serving as her only support. Without it, she would have collapsed entirely. The alien woman's pale lilac skin was marred with bruises and cuts. Her silver hair partially escaped from its battle braid. Her form-fitting combat suit, black with shimmering blue energy lines, was torn in several places, revealing more of that unusual lavender flesh beneath. Despite her wounds and the obvious exhaustion, there was still a fierce dignity in her posture. As Ashton approached, her large sapphire eyes widened in terror. She knew what came next. The humans had shown no mercy to her kind since the conflict began 3 months ago. Why would this encounter be any different? He raised his plasma rifle, its barrel glowing with lethal energy. One more dead Arcticonian wouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Just another casualty in humanity's relentless march across the stars. Don't kill me, human male." Her voice was surprisingly melodic, despite the fear that made it tremble. "I'll warm your bed." Ashton froze, his finger hovering over the trigger. The alien's words hung in the frigid air between them, unexpected and jarring. In all his years fighting across a dozen worlds, he'd never encountered surrender quite like this. "What did you say?" he demanded, his deep voice amplified by his helmet's speakers. The alien woman's gaze never wavered from his visor, where she knew his eyes must be. "Your people are winning this war. Mine are dying. I choose to live." Her grip tightened on her sword hilt. "I am Kyla Thalrin, daughter of General Thalrin. I have skills beyond battle that could, please you." Ashton lowered his weapon slightly, more out of surprise than mercy. "You'd betray your people? Your father?" A bitter laugh escaped her blue-tinged lips. "My father sent me and my unit to die as a distraction while he relocated our main forces. I owe him nothing," she coughed, a small spray of indigo blood speckling the pristine snow. "Besides, your kind will conquer us eventually. I'm merely being pragmatic." Something about her words rang true. Intelligence had reported fracturing among the Arcticonian military leadership. If she was indeed the daughter of General Thalrin, she could be valuable, far more valuable than as another corpse on this frozen battlefield. "Stand up," Ashton ordered, lowering his weapon completely but keeping it ready. Kyla struggled to her feet, using her sword as support. Once upright, she pulled the blade from the ground and, in a gesture that surprised him, offered it hilt first toward him. "My life is yours, human. Do with it what you will." Ashton accepted the weapon, noting its unusual balance and the strange, almost luminescent metal of its blade. "My name is Commander Snow, Ashton Snow. Will you accept my offer, Commander Snow?" Her voice had steadied now, though whether from resignation or determination, he couldn't tell. Before he could respond, Lieutenant Parker approached, his weapon trained on Kyla. "Sir, what are your orders regarding the prisoner?" Ashton studied the alien woman for a long moment. Protocol demanded he either eliminate her or send her to a detention facility for interrogation. But something in those sapphire eyes gave him pause. Intelligence, pride, and a desperate will to survive. "She's coming with us," he decided. "Alert the shuttle, we have a guest." Parker's surprise was evident even through his helmet. "Sir, command won't like—" "I'll deal with command," Ashton cut him off. This one might have valuable intelligence. As Parker moved away to relay the orders, Ashton turned back to Kyla. I'm not accepting your specific offer, but I am sparing your life for now. Relief washed over her features, followed quickly by wariness. Then what do you want from me, human? Information, he replied simply, and perhaps a way to end this conflict without further bloodshed. A strange expression crossed her alien features, something between hope and disbelief. You would consider peace? After all this? Ashton gestured to the battlefield around them. This benefits no one. If there's another way, I'm willing to listen. For the first time, Kyla smiled, a small, cautious thing that transformed her face. Then perhaps we both might survive this war after all. As the Terran shuttle descended through the swirling snow, Ashton couldn't shake the feeling that his decision would change everything. Not just for him and this alien warrior, but possibly for both their species. Whether that change would be for better or worse remained to be seen. The journey to the human base was a blur of swirling snow and tense silence. Kyla sat rigid in the transport shuttle, her wrists bound by energy restraints that hummed with a soft blue glow. Across from her, Commander Ashton Snow watched her with unwavering attention, his dark eyes revealing nothing of his thoughts. The shuttle's interior was uncomfortably warm for an Arcticonian. Beads of moisture formed on Kyla's lilac skin as her body struggled to adapt to the human preferred temperature. She noticed Snow studying this reaction with scientific curiosity. Your kind prefers the cold, he observed, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since leaving the battlefield. Kyla nodded. Our bodies are adapted to Arcticon's climate. This heat, she hesitated. It's rather intimate for my people. Intimate? Snow's eyebrow arched. Warmth is associated with closeness, private spaces, bedchambers. A deeper purple flush spread across her cheeks. It's why I made my offer. Heat is significant to us. Understanding dawned in Snow's eyes. So when you offered to warm my bed, it wasn't just a desperate plea, Kyla finished. Though I was desperate, it's a traditional surrender between warriors. The victor claims more than just the battlefield. Snow leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And that's acceptable to your people? Being claimed as some sort of prize? It's considered honorable, she replied. Better than death. And not permanent. Just until the victor releases the claim. She met his gaze directly. Your reaction suggests humans view this differently. A muscle twitched in Snow's jaw. Very differently. We don't take prisoners as companions. Then why am I still alive, Commander? Kyla asked softly. Before he could answer, the shuttle lurched as it began its descent. Through the viewport, Kyla caught her first glimpse of the human base, a sprawling complex of prefabricated structures surrounded by a shimmering energy barrier that held back Arcticon's perpetual blizzards. You're alive because you might be useful, Snow finally said, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced of his own reasoning. The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud. Two armed guards immediately flanked Kyla as she was escorted from the craft into a brightly lit hangar. Human personnel stopped their activities to stare at the alien prisoner, the first Arcticonian brought to the base alive rather than in a body bag. Snow led her through a series of security checkpoints to a medical bay where a stern-faced doctor awaited. Check her for injuries and tracking devices, Snow ordered, then bring her to the secure quarters in Section C. Not the detention cells? The doctor asked, surprise evident in his voice. No, Snow replied firmly. She's a high-value intelligence asset, not a common prisoner. After Snow departed, the medical examination proceeded with clinical efficiency. The doctor's touch was impersonal as he treated her wounds, but Kyla couldn't help noticing how his hands lingered slightly when examining the unusual texture of her skin or the structure of her joints. Your physiology is remarkably similar to ours, he commented, yet distinctly different in fascinating ways. We evolved in similar conditions, Kyla explained, wincing as he applied a healing compound to a gash on her arm, just on different worlds. Once treated, she was provided with a simple gray jumpsuit to replace her damaged combat suit and escorted to her new quarters. A small but comfortable room with basic furnishings and a viewport showing the swirling snowstorm outside. Hours later, The door slid open to admit Commander Snow, now dressed in a more casual uniform rather than battle armor. Without the bulky suit, his powerful physique was even more apparent. Broad shoulders, muscular arms, and a soldier's disciplined posture. "Your information about the Eastern Defense Grid was accurate," he said, without preamble. "That buys you some goodwill, but not trust." Kyla sat on the edge of the bed, her posture deliberately relaxed despite her racing pulse. "What would earn your trust, Commander?" "More actionable intelligence. The location of your father's new headquarters. For starters." She smiled thinly. "And if I provide that, what happens to me afterward? When my usefulness expires?" Snow crossed his arms. "That depends on how this war ends." "And how do you want it to end?" Kyla stood slowly, moving closer to him with deliberate grace. "With more bloodshed? Or something mutually beneficial?" The air between them seemed to thicken. Snow didn't step back, but his posture stiffened. "What are you suggesting? An alliance of sorts?" Kyla stopped just short of invading his personal space. "My father doesn't speak for all Arcticonians. Many of us want peace. And you'd betray your own father to achieve it." "He betrayed me first," she replied, bitterness edging her voice. "Sent me and my unit on a suicide mission because I advocated for negotiation rather than continued resistance?" Something shifted in Snow's expression, a flicker of empathy quickly suppressed. "If that's true," "It is," she insisted. "Verify it however you need to, but while you do..." She reached out slowly, giving him ample time to withdraw, and placed her hand lightly on his forearm. "Perhaps we could explore that cultural exchange I mentioned earlier." The contact sent a visible jolt through Snow. He looked down at her lilac fingers against his tanned skin, then back to her face. "That would be inappropriate." "By whose standards? Yours or mine?" Kyla's blue eyes held his. "On Arcticon, enemies who choose to become allies often seal their new bond physically. It creates trust where none existed before." Snow gently but firmly removed her hand. "On Earth, we use treaties and handshakes." "How disappointingly formal," she said with a small smile. "Is that why humans always seem so tense? All those unexplored diplomatic channels?" Despite himself, Snow's lips twitched toward a smile. "You're persistent, I'll give you that." "Persistence keeps me alive," Kyla replied, "as does adaptation. I'm trying to adapt to your ways, Commander. Perhaps you could try to understand mine." Snow studied her for a long moment. "I'll consider your offer of alliance, the political one," he clarified. "As for the rest, humans and Arcticonians clearly have different ideas about appropriate prisoner-captor relations." "Not prisoner," Kyla corrected. "Asset, remember? An asset should be utilized fully, shouldn't they?" Before Snow could respond, his communication device chimed. He checked it with a frown. "We'll continue this discussion later. I'm needed in command." As he turned to leave, Kyla called after him. "Commander, think about what I said. This war benefits neither of our peoples. Perhaps together, we could find a better way forward." Snow paused at the doorway, looking back at her with an unreadable expression. "Perhaps, but trust has to be earned, Kyla Thalrin, and you have a long way to go." After he left, Kyla returned to the viewport, watching the endless snow beyond the barrier. She had gambled everything on this strange human's capacity for mercy, and perhaps something more. Now she could only wait to see if that gamble would pay off. 3 days after bringing Kyla to the base, Ashton found himself in General Winter's office, facing an unexpected directive. "You want me to do what?" he asked, certain he had misheard. General Winters remained impassive behind her desk. "Intelligence believes we can extract more valuable information by exploiting the prisoner's cultural expectations." "By exploiting, you mean by allowing her to believe her offer of warming your bed is being considered?" The general's clinical tone made the suggestion even more unsettling. "Major McAllister's cultural analysis indicates that in Arcticonian society, such arrangements create a bond of trust." "We need that trust, Commander." Ashton felt his jaw tighten. "With respect, General, that crosses several ethical lines." "This is war, Snow. Lines get crossed. Winters slid a data pad across the desk. Her information about her father's southern mountain base checked out. The intelligence she's provided so far has been accurate but limited. We need more and quickly. And you think pretending to accept her cultural practices is the way to get it? I think giving her what she expects will lower her guard. Winter's eyes narrowed. I've seen how she looks at you, Commander, and how you look at her. Don't pretend there isn't already something developing there. Heat crept up Ashton's neck. My interest is purely professional. Keep telling yourself that, Winters replied dryly, but use whatever connection exists to our advantage. That's an order. As Ashton left the general's office, conflict churned within him. The mission parameters felt wrong, yet he couldn't deny his growing fascination with Kyla. Every interaction left him more intrigued by her alien perspective and undeniable allure. When he reached Kyla's quarters, he found her practicing some form of martial art, her movements fluid and graceful despite the confined space. She stopped mid-motion when the door opened, silver hair falling loose around her shoulders. Commander, she greeted him, slightly breathless. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten me. Hardly possible, he replied before he could stop himself. A smile played at her lips. Have you been thinking about our conversation? About different ways to build trust? Ashton stepped fully into the room, allowing the door to close behind him. I've been investigating your claims about your father's new base in the southern mountains. And? Kyla moved closer, her scent, something like winter berries and cold metal, filling his senses. They checked out. He maintained eye contact, searching for any hint of deception. Which raises an interesting question. Why would you so readily betray your own father? I told you, he betrayed me first. A shadow crossed her features. But there's something else you should know. Ashton raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The information I gave you was accurate, but incomplete. Kyla sat on the edge of her bed, gesturing for him to join her. When he remained standing, she continued, My father has formed an alliance with the Frost clan. They're providing him with experimental weapons technology. What kind of technology? The kind that could penetrate your base's defenses? Her blue eyes held his. I can tell you more, but first, she patted the space beside her. Join me, please. Ashton hesitated, the general's orders echoing in his mind. Use whatever connection exists to our advantage. With deliberate casualness, he sat beside her, maintaining a professional distance. Why tell me this now? He asked. Why not when you first arrived? Because I needed to know if you could be trusted. Kyla's hand moved to rest lightly on his arm. In my culture, information is currency. The most valuable secrets are only shared in intimate settings. The touch of her cool fingers sent an unexpected jolt through him. And this qualifies as intimate by Arcticonian standards? It's a start. Her voice dropped lower. But there are more effective ways to build the kind of trust needed for the information you want. Ashton was acutely aware of the surveillance cameras in the room, of his superiors likely watching this interaction with clinical interest. The thought sickened him even as another part of him responded to Kyla's proximity. These weapons, he said, steering the conversation back to safer ground. When will they be deployed? Kyla's fingers traced a pattern on his arm. Soon, within days. But there's something that doesn't add up about my father's strategy. It's almost as if what? Ashton prompted when she trailed off. As if he wants to be discovered. Her brow furrowed. The southern base is too obvious. My father is many things, but careless isn't one of them. A warning bell sounded in Ashton's mind. You think it's a trap? I think there's more happening than either of us understands. Kyla's hand moved to his face, her cool palm resting against his cheek. Trust works both ways, Commander. I've given you valuable information. Now I need something in return. What do you want? His voice had grown hoarse. The truth about why humans came to Arcticon. Her eyes searched his. This isn't just about mining operations, is it? Ashton felt caught between duty and something else. Something dangerous and undefined. General Winters wanted him to exploit Kyla's cultural expectations. But what if she was doing exactly the same to him? No, he admitted finally. It's not just about mining, but that information is classified. Nothing stays classified, between bonded warriors. Kyla leaned closer, her breath cool against his skin. In my culture, there are no secrets in the warmth of shared blankets. The implication hung between them, charged and tempting. Ashton knew what his superiors expected, what they had ordered. Use her cultural beliefs to gain her trust, extract information. But as Kyla's face drew nearer to his, another possibility occurred to him. What if she was playing the same game? What if I told you, he said carefully, that I'm under orders to exploit your cultural practices to gain your trust? Surprise flickered across her features, followed by something like respect. Then I would say you are more honorable than most warriors I've known to admit such a thing. And if I also told you that despite those orders, I find myself genuinely drawn to you. A genuine smile spread across her face. Then I would say humans and Arcticonians might not be so different after all. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Ashton knew he stood at a crossroads, duty on one path, something unknown but compelling on the other. Your father? He said finally. Is he really planning an attack? Or is this all an elaborate deception? Kyla's smile faded. My father is planning something, but I'm beginning to wonder if I'm as much in the dark as you are. She withdrew her hand from his face. Perhaps we're both being manipulated. By whom? That, she said softly, is what we need to discover, together. As Ashton left her quarters later, his mind raced with possibilities. Was Kyla genuinely seeking alliance, or was this all an elaborate trap? Were her cultural overtures sincere, or a calculated strategy to manipulate him? And most troubling of all, did his growing feelings for her compromise his ability to discern the truth? One thing was certain. The game they were playing had become far more dangerous and personal than either of them had anticipated. Lieutenant Parker slammed the data pad onto Colonel Harris's desk. This is the surveillance footage from the alien prisoner's quarters, sir. Commander Snow is compromised. Harris reviewed the footage with narrowed eyes. Snow sitting beside the Arcticonian female, her hand on his face, their faces drawing close. Interesting, he murmured. But not entirely unexpected. Sir, regulations clearly state. I know the regulations, Lieutenant. Harris silenced him with a sharp look. What I find more concerning is this. He pulled up another file, communications logs between the base and an unknown frequency. These encrypted transmissions originated from the prisoner's quarters during Snow's visits. Parker's eyes widened. She's transmitting intelligence to the enemy. Or receiving instructions. Harris leaned back in his chair. Either way, it appears our Commander Snow has been thoroughly played by this alien seductress. We should inform General Winters immediately. Not yet. Harris's lips curved into a cold smile. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Continue monitoring, but tell no one else about this. I want to build an airtight case before we move. Yes, sir. Parker hesitated. And Commander Snow? Let him dig his own grave. Ashton couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Kyla's face, felt the cool touch of her hand against his skin. Their conversation from earlier replayed in his mind, raising more questions than answers. His comm unit chimed, displaying a message from Major McAllister. Unusual energy signatures detected near Southern Base. Possible weapons test. Briefing at 0600. The timing was too perfect. Kyla reveals information about experimental weapons, and hours later they detect unusual energy signatures. Was she feeding him accurate intelligence or leading them into a trap? A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Checking the time, 0200 hours, he frowned. No one should be at his quarters at this hour. When he opened the door, Kyla stood in the corridor, a security guard unconscious at her feet. What the hell? Ashton reached for his sidearm, but Kyla raised her hand in surrender. He's only stunned. I needed to see you privately. Her eyes darted nervously down the corridor. Someone's monitoring our conversations, using them to feed false information to both sides. Ashton kept his weapon trained on her. How did you escape your quarters? Your security systems aren't designed for Arcticonian physiology. She stepped forward, forcing him to back into his room. "We don't have much time. They'll discover I'm gone soon." "Who's they?" Ashton demanded, not lowering his weapon. "Someone in your command structure is working with my father." Kyla's voice was urgent. "I've been receiving coded messages through the surveillance system in my quarters. At first I thought they were from my father's loyalists, but the pattern was wrong." "So you've been communicating with someone?" Ashton's suspicions hardened. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." Kyla moved closer, seemingly unconcerned by the weapon pointed at her. "I needed to confirm my suspicions before I brought them to you." "And what suspicions are those?" "That this war is being engineered by a third party. Someone who benefits from humans and Arcticonians destroying each other." Her eyes locked with his. "Someone who has infiltrated both our command structures." Ashton wanted to dismiss her claims as desperate fabrications, but they aligned too well with inconsistencies he'd noticed himself. "You have proof?" "Not yet, but I know how to get it." She was close enough now that the barrel of his gun nearly touched her chest. "I need you to trust me, Ashton. Not because of cultural traditions or military orders, but because what's happening here is bigger than both of us." The use of his first name shouldn't have affected him, but it did. "If you're playing me, I'm not." She placed her hand over his, gently pushing the weapon aside. "And I can prove it." Before he could react, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was startling. Her lips cooler than a human's, the sensation alien, yet undeniably arousing. When she pulled back, her eyes searched his. "In my culture, a kiss is a binding oath of honesty. I cannot lie to you now." Ashton knew it could be another manipulation, another cultural claim he had no way to verify. Yet something in her expression, in the vulnerability of the gesture, reached past his defenses. "What do you need from me?" he asked, holstering his weapon. Relief flooded her features. "Access to your communications array. I can trace the encrypted signals to their source." "That's highly restricted." "I know. That's why I came to you." Her hand still rested on his. "There's something else you should know. The reason I offered to warm your bed wasn't just cultural tradition. The admission hung between them, charged with unspoken meaning." Ashton found himself moving closer, drawn by something beyond duty or suspicion. "Why then?" "Because from the moment you spared me on that battlefield, I saw something in you that reminded me of what I've been fighting for. Not conquest or power, but the possibility of something better." Her fingers intertwined with his. "My people have a saying, in the coldest storm, seek the warmest heart. I think I found it in you." The sincerity in her voice disarmed him more effectively than any strategy could have. Ashton knew he stood at a precipice. One step would send him falling into territory from which there might be no return. He took that step, pulling her against him as his mouth found hers. This kiss was different, hungry, desperate, a release of tension that had been building since their first encounter on the battlefield. Her body molded against his, cool against his heat, alien yet perfectly complementary. When they finally broke apart, breathing heavily, Ashton rested his forehead against hers. "If you're lying to me, I'm not." Her blue eyes held his. "What happens between us now is real. Whatever else is happening around us, this is truth." The night that followed was a discovery of differences and similarities, of alien anatomy that echoed human forms, while offering new sensations and responses. Cultural barriers fell away as they found a more primal language of connection, her cooler body temperature creating an exquisite contrast against his heat. Afterward, as Kyla lay curled against him, Ashton knew he had crossed a line from which there was no return. If she was indeed playing him, he had fallen completely into her trap. Yet the vulnerability in her eyes she'd surrendered to him seemed too genuine to fake. "We need to move quickly," she murmured against his chest. "When they discover I'm gone." "Too late for that," a cold voice interrupted. Ashton looked up to see Colonel Harris standing in the doorway, flanked by security personnel with weapons drawn. Lieutenant Parker stood slightly behind them, his expression a mixture of disgust and triumph. "Commander Snow," Harris said with false formality, "you are hereby relieved of duty pending investigation for treason and compromising security protocols." His gaze shifted to Kyla. "And you alien have just sealed your fate." As security personnel moved to separate them, Ashton caught Kyla's gaze. The fear in her eyes seemed genuine, but so had everything else she'd shown him. Had he been manipulated from the start, or had he just found an ally in the most unlikely place? Either way, they were both out of time. The interrogation room was deliberately cold, a calculated discomfort for a human prisoner, but ironically comfortable for an Arcticonian like Kyla. She sat alone, energy restraints binding her to the metal chair, wondering if Ashton was enduring similar treatment elsewhere in the facility. The door slid open, and to her surprise, General Winters entered rather than Colonel Harris. The older woman's face was a mask of professional detachment as she took the seat across from Kyla. "Quite the performance you've given, Kyla Thalloran," Winters said, her voice cool but not hostile. "You've managed to compromise one of my best officers in record time." Kyla met her gaze steadily. "If you believe that's all that happened between us, you understand neither your officer nor my intentions." "Enlighten me then." Winters placed a data pad on the table between them. "Explain these encrypted transmissions sent from your quarters." "I didn't send them," Kyla replied. "I received them. Someone was using the surveillance system in my quarters to communicate with me, or rather to make it appear I was communicating with outside forces." Winters' expression didn't change. "Convenient explanation. It's the truth. The transmissions were designed to look like they came from my father's forces, but the encryption pattern was wrong." Kyla leaned forward as far as her restraints allowed. "Someone wants your people to believe I'm a spy while feeding false intelligence to both sides of this conflict? And who might that someone be?" "The Frost clan." Kyla watched carefully for any reaction. "They've infiltrated both our command structures." A flicker of something, recognition perhaps, crossed Winters' face before disappearing behind her professional mask. "The Frost clan is a minor faction with minimal influence. That's what they want everyone to believe, but they've been manipulating this war from the beginning." Kyla took a calculated risk. "And I think you already suspect as much, General." Winters was silent for a long moment, studying Kyla with penetrating intensity. Finally, she tapped something on her data pad, and the surveillance indicators in the room blinked off. "You have exactly 3 minutes before security protocols automatically reactivate," Winters said, her voice lower. "Speak quickly." Kyla didn't waste the opportunity. The Frost clan discovered something beneath Arcticon's surface, an energy source unlike anything our people have seen. They need both humans and Arcticonians distracted by war while they extract it. My father doesn't know he's being manipulated, but Colonel Harris does. He's working with them. That's a serious accusation. Check the communication logs, not just from my quarters, but from Harris's private terminal. He's been feeding my father selective intelligence, ensuring the conflict continues. Kyla's eyes locked with Winters. And now he has Ashton. Winters' expression hardened. Commander Snow violated multiple protocols. His actions were exactly what Harris wanted, Kyla interrupted. He's been watching us, waiting for the perfect moment to discredit Ashton and remove me as a threat. The general checked her timepiece. 30 seconds. "The weapons test your people detected in the southern mountains? It's not what you think. The Frost clan is testing technology powered by what they've found beneath the ice. If they succeed, both our peoples will be at their mercy." Kyla's voice grew urgent. "You need Ashton, and whether you like it or not, you need me too." The surveillance indicators blinked back to life just as Winters stood. "Guard," she called, and the door opened immediately. "Return the prisoner to the high-security detention cell. No visitors." As the guard led her away, Kyla caught Winters' final glance, a look that contained neither trust nor dismissal, but something far more valuable, consideration. Ashton paced his cell, mind racing through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. The only interruption to his confinement had been a brief, hostile interrogation by Harris, who seemed more interested in gloating than gathering information. The cell door slid open, revealing Lieutenant Parker with a security detail. "On your feet, traitor," Parker ordered, obvious satisfaction in his voice. "General Winters wants to see you." They escorted him through corridors deliberately chosen to maximize his public humiliation. Fellow officers who had respected him yesterday now watched with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. Ashton kept his head high, focusing on what mattered: Kyla's safety and the truth of her claims. To his surprise, they brought him not to an interrogation room, but to Winters' private office. The general dismissed Parker and the security detail, leaving them alone. "Sit down, Snow," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "General, I can explain." "Save it." Winters activated a jamming field around the office. "I need to know one thing, and I need the absolute truth. Is your judgment compromised where the alien prisoner is concerned?" Ashton considered lying, then decided against it. "My feelings for Kyla are complicated, but my judgment isn't compromised. If anything, they've given me clarity." "Clarity," Winters repeated skeptically. "About what exactly?" "About the fact that this war benefits neither humans nor Arcticonians, about the inconsistencies in our intelligence, about Harris's unusual interest in prolonging this conflict rather than resolving it." Winters leaned back, studying him. "The alien, Kyla, made some interesting claims during her interrogation. Claims about the Frost clan and their true agenda on Arcticon." Hope surged through Ashton. And I've been conducting my own investigation for weeks." Winters turned her datapad toward him, displaying communications logs. These encrypted transmissions between Harris and an unknown party contain references to something called Project Permafrost. "My cryptography team hasn't been able to crack the full encryption, but what we have decoded is concerning." Ashton scanned the partial transcripts. They mentioned keeping the players engaged and maintaining the conflict timeline. Harris is deliberately prolonging the war. "It appears so." Winters reclaimed the datapad. "What I don't understand is why the alien came to you instead of trying to escape when she had the chance." The memory of Kyla's body against his, the vulnerability in her eyes as they'd connected, flashed through Ashton's mind. "Because she's telling the truth. She wants to end this war as much as we should." Winters' expression remained skeptical. "Or she's playing an even deeper game. With respect, General, I don't believe she is." Ashton leaned forward. "Let me speak with her again. Together, we might be able to piece together what Harris and the Frost clan are really planning." "Impossible. Harris has too much influence with command. Any official contact between you two would alert him immediately." Winters stood, pacing behind her desk. "However, there may be another way." She activated a secure channel on her communication terminal. "Major McAllister, implement protocol whiteout. Authorization Winters, Alpha 79. "Protocol whiteout?" Ashton questioned. "A contingency plan for suspected internal security compromise." Winters checked her timepiece. "In approximately 10 minutes, there will be a base-wide systems reset to address a critical power fluctuation. During that reset, all cell doors will default to open for exactly 47 seconds before the emergency power engages." Understanding dawned on Ashton. "Oh, you're giving us a chance to escape." "I'm conducting a necessary systems diagnostic during a time of potential enemy activity," Winters corrected firmly. "What happens during that diagnostic is beyond my control. However, if certain individuals were to take advantage of the situation to investigate unauthorized communications at our southern monitoring outpost, I might find their initiative commendable." Ashton stood. "Thank you, General." "Don't thank me yet, Snow." Winters' expression was grim. "If you're wrong about the alien, if this is all an elaborate trap, you'll both die out there. And if you're right, you might still die. But at least it will be for something that matters." As security personnel returned to escort him back to his cell, Ashton felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever happened next, he and Kyla would face it together, human and Arcticonian, united against those who would use their peoples as pawns. "In the coldest storm seek the warmest heart." Her words echoed in his mind as he prepared for what was to come. Perhaps that warmth was what would save them all. The lights flickered and died precisely as Winters had promised. Ashton counted silently in his head, waiting for the emergency systems to recognize the power failure. When his cell door slid open, with a pneumatic hiss, he was already positioned to slip through. The corridor was cast in the dim red glow of emergency lighting. Moving with practiced stealth, Ashton navigated toward the high-security detention area where Kyla was being held. He encountered only 2 guards, both distracted by the sudden systems failure, and managed to avoid them entirely. When he reached Kyla's cell, she was already waiting at the threshold, a knowing smile on her face. "Your General Winters is impressively resourceful," she whispered as they moved quickly through the corridors. "She's giving us one chance," Ashton replied. "We can't waste it." They reached the equipment storage bay just as the main power systems began to reboot. Ashton quickly gathered essential survival gear: thermal clothing, weapons, communications equipment, and emergency rations. Kyla, meanwhile, located and disabled the tracking devices in everything he selected. "The perimeter sensors will be offline for another 3 minutes," she said, checking a nearby terminal. "We need to move now." They slipped out through a maintenance access point, emerging into the biting cold of Arcticon's perpetual winter. The base's energy barrier was temporarily down, allowing them to pass undetected into the vast white wilderness beyond. For hours, they trudged through knee-deep snow, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the human base. Kyla moved with natural grace across the frozen terrain, while Ashton struggled to maintain the pace despite his superior physical strength. "You're not built for this environment," Kyla observed as they paused briefly in the shelter of an ice formation. "Your body expends too much energy generating heat." "I'll manage," Ashton insisted, though his face was reddened from the cold despite the thermal gear. Kyla studied him with concern. "We need better shelter before nightfall. There's a system of ice caves 2 kilometers east that my people use as waypoints." As they changed direction, the wind intensified, driving razor-sharp ice crystals against any exposed skin. Visibility dropped to mere meters. Ashton felt Kyla's cool hand grasp his, guiding him forward when his own senses became unreliable in the whiteout conditions. "How can you navigate in this?" he shouted over the howling wind. "Arcticonians can sense magnetic fields," she called back. "It's how we evolved to survive here." Just when Ashton thought his limits had been reached, Kyla pulled him into the mouth of an ice cave. The sudden absence of wind was almost disorienting. The cave extended deep into the glacier, its walls a translucent blue that seemed to glow with an inner light. "It's beautiful," Ashton breathed, his voice echoing slightly. "And defensible," Kyla added practically, already setting up a small heating unit from their supplies. "We should be safe here until the storm passes." As warmth gradually filled their shelter, Ashton removed his outer layers. Kyla watched him with undisguised interest. "Your thermal regulation is fascinating," she said. "Your skin flushes with blood to disperse heat. Arcticonians do the opposite. Our blood retreats from the surface to conserve warmth. Is that why your skin feels cool to the touch?" Ashton asked. "Yes, it's also why—" She hesitated, a deeper purple blush spreading across her cheeks. "Why the sharing of body heat is so significant in our culture. To allow someone else's warmth to penetrate your core is the ultimate vulnerability." The implication hung between them, charged with memory of their night together. Before either could speak further, a sound from deeper in the cave system froze them both. Ashton drew his weapon, moving protectively in front of Kyla. "We're not alone." They advanced cautiously into the tunnel. The sound came again, a pained groan that was distinctly sentient. Rounding a bend in the ice corridor, they discovered its source. An Arcticonian male slumped against the wall, clutching a bloody wound in his side. Kyla gasped. "Kalen!" She rushed forward, kneeling beside the wounded alien. The male looked up, recognition and disbelief crossing his features. "Kyla?" How? His gaze shifted to Ashton, and his expression hardened. "Human!" He attempted to reach for a weapon, but Kyla restrained him. "No, Kalen, he's with me. He's an ally." "Ally?" Kalen spat the word. "After what they did to our scouting party? After what they're doing with the Frost Clan?" Ashton tensed. "What about the Frost Clan?" Kalen glared at him with undisguised hatred, but seemed too weak to maintain his hostility. "The Southern Outpost," he said finally. "It's not what either of your leaders think. The humans there aren't fighting us. They're working with the clan." Kyla began treating his wound with supplies from their pack. "Tell us everything, Kalen." "I was part of a reconnaissance unit," he explained, wincing as Kyla applied a healing compound. "We were tracking unusual energy signatures when we discovered the outpost. It's massive, built into the mountain itself. We saw human officers and Frost Clan elders entering together. No hostility between them. Harris, Ashton muttered. He must have personnel there loyal to him. We tried to get closer, Kaelin continued, but they have security technology unlike anything I've seen. My entire unit was captured or killed. I barely escaped. How long ago? Kyla asked. 2 days. I've been hiding here trying to regain enough strength to return to our forces. His eyes narrowed at Ashton. Why are you with him, Kyla? Has he claimed you as spoils? The question carried cultural implications Ashton was beginning to understand. Assumptions about their relationship based on Arcticonian traditions of conquest and surrender. To his surprise, Kyla's response was fierce. No one claims me, Kylan. I choose my own path. And my own mate. The possessive declaration sent an unexpected thrill through Ashton. Kaelin seemed equally shocked, his cultural framework clearly shaken by her assertion of autonomy. The human way has influenced you, Kaelin observed, a mixture of disapproval and curiosity in his voice. Perhaps for the better, Kyla replied. Their individualism has strengths our collective traditions lack. As they continued treating Kaelin's wounds, Ashton studied the interaction with fascination. The cultural exchange happening before him, Kyla defending human values while Kaelin represented traditional Arcticonian perspectives, was as revealing as any intelligence briefing. Once Kaelin's condition stabilized, they shared their own story, the discovery of Harris's betrayal, Winters' covert assistance, and their mission to find proof of the conspiracy. The outpost is heavily guarded, Kaelin warned. You'll never infiltrate it directly. We won't have to, Kyla said, a plan forming in her mind. They'll welcome us inside. How? Ashton asked. Her blue eyes met his, determination and something deeper shining in them. You'll be my prisoner, a captured human officer being delivered to the Frost clan as a gesture of alliance. And who will you be? Kaelin asked skeptically. Kyla's expression hardened. My father's loyal daughter, returning to the fold with a valuable gift. She turned to Ashton. It will be dangerous. If they discover our deception, they won't, Ashton said with confidence. We've come too far to fail now. As they finalized their plan, the storm outside began to subside. Soon they would journey to the southern outpost, risking everything on a desperate gambit to expose the truth. But for this brief moment, in the ethereal blue glow of the ice cave, they allowed themselves to acknowledge what had been growing between them, a connection that transcended species and cultures, forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual respect. When night fell and Kaelin had drifted into healing sleep, Kyla and Ashton retreated to a private alcove deeper in the cave system. There, surrounded by walls of ancient ice that had witnessed millennia of Arcticon's history, they found warmth in each other's arms, human heat meeting Arcticonian, cool in a perfect balance that neither had known was possible before their paths crossed on that snowy battlefield. The daughter of General Thalrin returns with a gift, announced the Frost clan guard at the southern outpost's entrance, his voice echoing through the cavernous antechamber. Kyla stood proud and cold, her posture radiating the arrogance expected of her lineage. Behind her, Ashton knelt in fabricated submission, his hands bound with energy restraints they had carefully modified to release on command. I bring Commander Snow of the human forces, Kyla declared to the assembled Frost clan elders and human officers. A token of my renewed loyalty to our cause. Colonel Harris stepped forward from the group, suspicion evident in his narrowed eyes. This is unexpected, Kyla Thalrin. Last I heard, you were enjoying the commander's hospitality in a more intimate capacity. A ripple of knowing laughter spread through the room. Kyla's expression remained impassive, though Ashton could sense her tension. I played my role well, didn't I? She replied with calculated cruelty. The humans are so easily manipulated by their baser instincts, especially this one. She yanked Ashton's head back by his hair, a gesture that looked brutal but was carefully choreographed between them. He believed I had fallen for him completely. Harris studied her, not fully convinced. And your father? Does he know of your return? My father believes me dead or captured. I thought it best to bring my prize directly to those who truly hold power on Arcticon. Her gaze swept meaningfully across the gathered Frost clan elders. The eldest of them, a female with skin so pale it was nearly translucent, stepped forward. Take the human to the holding cells. We will question him about the main base's defenses later. She turned to Kyla. You will join us in the chamber. It is time you witnessed what we have discovered. As guards led Ashton away, he caught Kyla's subtle nod. Phase 1 complete. Now they just had to survive Phase 2. The holding cells were minimally guarded, the Frost clan clearly confident in their security systems. Using the modified restraints, Ashton freed himself and neutralized the single guard without raising an alarm. He quickly located a terminal and began downloading data about the facility's operations. What he found confirmed their worst fears. The Frost clan had discovered an ancient power source deep beneath Arcticon's surface. Technology from a civilization that had inhabited the planet millennia before either humans or Arcticonians arrived. They were harvesting its energy to create weapons that could subjugate both species. Meanwhile, Kyla followed the Frost clan elder through corridors that descended deep into the mountain. They eventually entered a vast chamber where the ice had been carved away to reveal a structure unlike anything she had ever seen. A massive crystalline formation that pulsed with blue-white energy. The ancients left this for us, the elder explained reverently. A power source that will make the Frost clan the rightful rulers of Arcticon and beyond. It's magnificent, Kyla breathed, her awe genuine despite her deception. How did you discover it? Initial mining operations detected unusual energy readings. We ensured we controlled those operations by manipulating both sides into conflict. The elder smiled coldly. Your father was particularly useful. His hatred of humans made him easy to influence. And the humans? Kyla asked. Colonel Harris has his price, like all humans. The elder gestured to where Harris stood with several officers, examining technical readouts. They provide technical expertise we lack in exchange for promises of power and territory once the conquest is complete. As if sensing their discussion, Harris looked up and approached. Your father has arrived, he informed Kyla with a smirk. Apparently, he received word of your capture of Commander Snow and came to witness the interrogation personally. Kyla's heart raced. This complicated everything, yet might also provide the perfect opportunity. In the security control room, Ashton had just finished transmitting the evidence to General Winters when alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. On the monitors, he saw General Halrin entering with a contingent of Arcticonian warriors. Perfect timing, he muttered, grabbing a weapon and heading toward the ancient chamber. The confrontation was already underway when he arrived. General Thalren, an imposing figure with the same silver hair as his daughter, but none of her warmth, stood facing both Harris and the Frost clan elders. Kyla stood between them, her position ambiguous. Father? She acknowledged coolly. Daughter, Thalren replied with equal frost. I see rumors of your betrayal were not exaggerated. The only betrayal here, Kyla responded, is against both our peoples. She gestured to the ancient power source. The Frost clan has manipulated us all, using our conflict to hide their true agenda. Harris laughed. A touching reunion, but ultimately pointless. The weapon is nearly operational. Soon both humans and mainstream Arcticonians will bow to a new order. I think not, came Ashton's voice as he emerged from concealment, weapon raised. It's over, Harris. General Winters has received all the evidence. Human and Arcticonian forces are converging on this location as we speak. Harris's face contorted with rage. Kill them all, he ordered the guards. Chaos erupted. Energy weapons discharged, filling the chamber with deadly light. Ashton dove toward Kyla, shielding her as they took cover behind a console. General Thalren and his warriors engaged the Frost clan forces, while Harris retreated toward the ancient power source. He's going to overload it, Kyla realized, watching Harris input commands into the control system. He'll destroy everything rather than surrender. Ashton assessed the situation with military precision. I can reach the controls, but I'll need covering fire. Their eyes met, a lifetime of understanding passing between them in an instant. Together, Kyla said firmly. They moved as one, Kyla providing precise covering fire while Ashton advanced toward the controls. General Thalren, seeing their strategy, ordered his warriors to support them. Harris turned, his face twisted with hatred as Ashton approached. You fool! Do you think your primitive human mind can comprehend this technology? Maybe not, Ashton admitted, still advancing, but I understand enough to know. You're about to destroy something that should belong to both our peoples." With a snarl, Harris fired his weapon. The shot caught Ashton in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Kyla screamed, firing repeatedly at Harris, forcing him away from the controls. Ashton staggered to his feet, clutching his wounded shoulder. "I'm all right," he called to Kyla. "Keep him pinned down." The ancient power source was pulsing faster now, the blue-white energy becoming unstable. Ashton reached the control panel, trying to decipher the alien interface. Nothing made sense, until he noticed patterns that echoed Arcticonian script. "Kyla," he shouted over the chaos. "I need you here. The controls, they're similar to your language." Kyla fought her way to his side, quickly scanning the interface. "It's an ancient dialect, but I recognize elements." Her fingers flew across the symbols. "It's asking for harmony, balance." Understanding dawned on Ashton. Two species working together. That's the key. He placed his hand beside hers on the control panel. Where his palm touched, the interface glowed with warm amber light. Where hers rested, cool blue illumination spread. The colors merged where their hands met, creating a perfect harmony that spread throughout the system. The pulsing energy stabilized and then dimmed to a sustainable glow. Around them, the fighting gradually ceased as all parties witnessed the transformation. Harris, seeing his plan failing, made one final desperate lunge toward them. General Thalren intercepted him, the two leaders grappling at the edge of the platform overlooking the ancient power source. "Father!" Kyla cried out as both men toppled over the edge. Ashton reacted instantly, diving to catch Thalren's hand while Kyla secured his legs. Together, they pulled the Arcticonian general to safety. Harris was not so fortunate. He fell into the energy field below, his body dissolving into particles of light that were absorbed into the ancient system. In the stunned silence that followed, General Thalren looked at his daughter and the human who had saved him with new understanding. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "I have been fighting the wrong enemy." 3 months later, the ancient chamber had been transformed into a joint research facility. Human and Arcticonian scientists worked side by side, studying the technology that both species now recognized as a gift rather than a weapon. On a viewing platform overlooking the operation, Ashton and Kyla stood together, his arm around her waist in a public display that would have been unthinkable before. "General Winters says the peace treaty will be ratified next week," Ashton informed her. "Your father's signature was the final piece." Kyla smiled, leaning into his warmth. "He's changed. Seeing humans and Arcticonians working together to harness the ancient power for peaceful purposes has opened his mind." "And what about you?" Ashton asked, turning her to face him. "Any regrets about how this all began?" Her blue eyes sparkled with mischief. "You mean my offer on the battlefield? To warm your bed?" "That's exactly what I mean." His voice dropped lower, intimate despite their public location. "It worked, didn't it?" She traced a finger along his jaw. "Though I never imagined where it would lead." Ashton caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "To think this all started because you didn't want me to kill you. And now I can't imagine living without you," she replied softly. "Funny how the universe works." Below them, the ancient power source pulsed with harmonious energy, neither purely human nor Arcticonian, but something new and beautiful created by both. Like their relationship, it represented the best of both worlds, a balance of opposites that created something stronger than either could achieve alone. As they turned to leave, Kyla cast one last glance at the spot where she had first knelt before Ashton on that snowy battlefield, desperate and afraid. From that moment of surrender had come not subjugation, but partnership, a new way forward for both their peoples. "Don't kill me, human male," she whispered playfully, echoing those first desperate words. "I'll warm your bed." Ashton smiled, pulling her close. "For the rest of our days," he promised, "through every winter Arctican can throw at us." Hand in hand, they walked toward their shared future, a future neither could have imagined when they first met as enemies on a battlefield of ice and snow, but which now stretched before them, warm with possibility.